Done. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome to Conflict Resolution in the SCA, Part 2. Proposal for the mediation process. This was put together by myself and His Grace Mahadi. So this is our proposal for the mediation process. This has not been formally adopted as far as I know. Mahadi, do you know if it has been?
No, I can tell you that this thing is still very much in the hopefully to be adopted stage.
Okay.
But yeah, but the actual proposal has actually been sent upward, and hope we'll hear something in the near future.
So one of the things that we'll be talking about today are tools and, the mediation. What is the job of the mediator? What the mediator needs to do as far as mediation for a conflict. So let's get started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is, as you can see, it's all about addressing conflict within the SCA. And this really is for issues within this kingdom, okay? Of course, we all know there are issues that come from outside of the kingdom, Facebook posts or otherwise. But this just deals with people inside of Ansiora.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're trying to find an answer, so you have two different ideas and you're trying to find a resolution. The end goal always is to stop the pain. If any pain has been inflicted by either party, either the instigator or the receiver. Usually by the time a conflict starts, pain has been endured on both ends, usually, but not always. Welcome, Cynthia. We just got started. So any questions about this slide? I know you can all read. I've seen you do it. So any questions? And we'll do questions at the end after each slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mediators use various techniques to open or improve the dialogue and the empathy between the two parties.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to reach your agreement. And this is very true. If one of the two parties involved does not want to reach an agreement of any kind, then mediation cannot take place. If one person does not want to stop the pain, so to speak, then mediation can't take place because both parties have to agree in the beginning of this process that they're going to stop, no matter what. So even if, one party agrees and one party disagrees, they both agree they're going to stop. And that's the whole reason why we're entering mediation. If you're not entering mediation and you're not going to stop, there's no point for the mediation at all. Okay, roles of the mediator. You have the convener, the educator, the communication facilitator, and the translator. So let's talk about the convener. So obviously you're going to be conveying the meeting, and you're also going to be a communication facilitator. You're going to, in the beginning of this, look at what you're going to have talk to each person and find out their point of view and sum up that point of view back in bullet points back to that person. That way they understand that you understand their points. And you're going to do that to both parties. And then before the meeting happens, you're going to make sure those bullet points go to each member of the process, so they can see and acknowledge and understand what the other person's points are. You're going to have to be a translator. Obviously, in many cases, you're going to have to use active listening and translate for one party to another, not just using emotions, but actual speech in some cases.
Yeah, one of the keys in this translation thing, and one of the things that's you have to be very careful about, some people don't like to have people state, what I said was, or what you meant, they don't like it actually being restated in a particular manner. However, it's going to be necessary during this particular time that they have to, when they're trying to explain things. You may be saying X. You may believe you're actually conveying an idea. The fact is that everybody else hears Y. They're hearing something different. You have to make sure that everybody's going to be on the same page when you're actually acting as a translator.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, the roles of the mediator. Okay, so one, it's not listed here, but you're going to have to be the person to ask questions, and you're going to have to ask for clarifications. The mediator needs to make sure that whatever is being stated by either one of the parties is clear and easily understood by the other person. Mm-hmm. And also, you have to really get down to reality here, where it says angel realities.
Yeah, you may have to sit there and actually, while it says angel realities, you may have to actually play devil's advocate while coming with solutions, actually giving people options for, you may be thinking you want this, but here's something else you may actually want to consider if you're going to try to even this particular type of thing out.
So in the process, when we say responsible and detailed person, we're asking the mediator to actually document what's being talked about and what is being acknowledged or not acknowledged by both parties. That way there's no confusion when the mediator types up notes about what was talked about and what was said, and that is shared with both parties after the mediation takes place. And here's the most important part of this, confidentiality. So the mediator must be able to keep their mouth shut after what's been discussed. You can't say, well, yeah, I just last week mediated an issue between Ivo and Rob over some stupid thing that Rob said. That's just an example, and I'm using people on this call. They know I'm joking. So.
Right. They also say the other key is, like I said, you may actually want to see, you may think you can drop the names out of the conflict and still actually talk about it. But the fact is, if you start talking about it in a hypothetical and you're doing it out in public, somebody, when they hear it, they'll know you're talking about them. You'll actually gut the entire mediation process because, sorry, as much as you can leave names out, people know when you're talking about issues dealing with them.
So here are the qualities of what we think a mediator should have. You need to be alert, you need to be patient and tactful, credible. Objectivity is really number one in my book. Adaptable and perseverant. You can't give up. You have to keep going through and plugging through, however painful the process may be. You have to see it to the end. And what I mean by the end is the agreement or non-agreement between the two parties. Mm-hmm. So this is the actual steps for the mediation process. In this process, we have a mediation coordinator. So a request for the mediation is made by an SCA member or person residing within the boundaries of our kingdom, and through some sort of contact or portal. The mediation process coordinator will assign a mediator from a list of mediators to this case, providing the mediator with the contact information for all the concerned parties. That's one of the things we ask, is that for any kind of mediation, we need to have not just an email, but as much contact information as possible, especially a phone number. All these mediation steps are going to take place at least over the phone, if not by Zoom meeting. And so we have to have the necessary contact information to make sure that happens. If I'm going too fast for anybody, please stop me. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to just go ahead and talk. You don't have
I
to
assume by contact information, you just mean the stuff that's printed for every officer in the Black Star.
Contact information is where I can call you on the phone. That's not always in the Black Star.
The standard stuff that's already printed in the Black Star.
Usually, yes.
Yeah, if we were talking about officers, then it would be the regular contact information that way. If we were talking about two people who weren't officers who asked for mediation, then the idea would be they would provide some type of either email or some type of means by which they could be contacted.
So you can see here the mediator will contact both parties by email or other electronic media to get a phone number or to set up a Skype or Zoom session. During this step, the mediator will conduct an interview with each party involved in the mediation. And during this process, that should be on the next slide. Here we go. After each interview, the interviewer will write up a summary and list the reasons behind the disagreement as bullet points. And then once completed, that summary will be shared and sent to the interview party to affirm that summary, okay? And get their satisfaction as that all their points have been brought up. And in addition, the mediator will ask a series of clarification questions. So one of my favorites is, why did you do this? What were you hoping to accomplish? What was your goal in making and doing whatever you did, whether it be supposed bullying or hate speech or what have you? Why did you do it? And most people don't always have an answer for that, is what I've found. Or it can be a real eye-opener when they try to answer that question. Okay, the mediator will contact each party and attempt to establish a meeting between all the concerned. Prior to the meeting, the mediator will provide the summaries to both parties. And during the meeting, the mediator will begin the meeting with the stated purpose of the mediation. So the shared purpose is that no matter what, after this meeting, there will be no more actions taken by either party to hurt the other. Everybody agrees that there will be no more pain inflicted verbally or hopefully not physically ever, but verbally or otherwise. And you agree to that as part of this mediation. The mediator will encourage the use of active listening practices by the participants. Does everyone here understand what we mean by active listening? I see people shaking their heads, yes. Sorry, go ahead. Okay.
What was that?
So active listening is when I always call it is understand and repeat. So, you see the points, and I always ask people to you repeat the points that have been shown to you. That way, I know that you have read them and you can speak them back. You may not still understand them, but you're engaged in what's being presented to you. Mm-hmm. At this point, okay, all participants should be able to determine the true points of contention, if any exist. Should the points of contention be a matter of perspective, the parties will be encouraged to accept such differences. So, I'm going to bring up a topic. So let's talk about bullying. Okay, bullying can be a perspective. Someone may think they're being bullied, and another person just thinks they're trying to be very helpful. But that can be in some cases a matter of perspective. I mean, there are some cases of bullying that are not a matter of perspective, but that is an example. Next slide. After the mediation between all parties is completed, the mediator will write a summary and send all the documentation to the mediation process coordinator. So what's going to happen for this process, the mediator is taking notes, writing up summaries, and it writes up a summary of what's being discussed, okay? And what, if anything, was agreed to. So if on the call someone says, I agree to a public apology for X on what I did on this, that's going to be shared with the MPC, okay? If one of both concerned parties choose not to engage in this meeting, the mediator must explain to both parties that further action by either party on these topics should not be reenacted. I think we've talked about that already, is that if you agree to the mediation, you're agreeing to stop whatever provocative action you're taking, period. That's the goal of the mediation process. Everything stops. So that's the last slide, believe it or not. So our mediation process really is about getting one person or a mediator involved and making sure that both parties understand they are being heard. And that's why we're taking notes and doing summary bullet points and sharing those back with the person who's being interviewed. So they understand that their feelings or their pain is being documented and someone is listening to them. And it's for, as we said, it's for both parties. And since we get them to approve this, then it's a validation of what was understood by the mediator, what was said. This helps in the long run because the mediator now understands what each person's issues or points are. And that's really the first step before true mediation can begin, is understanding the points from each party. So any questions at this point? I probably went through it way too quickly, but it's really pretty simple. You have an issue, it goes to a coordinator, the coordinator sets up a mediator, and the mediator is the one that takes the actions between investigating and interviewing the two parties and summing up I don't want to say their issues, but their points, and then sending that back to the person who's being interviewed to see if they agree with the summary. And if they do, then the mediator can then use that summary whenever the actual mediation begins by sending that to the other person. So each person understands the other person's, well, not understands, but can see the perspective from the other person. I won't say understands. That's really kind of reaching in some cases.
So I have a question that I know is a little bit outside the scope of the purpose, but dovetails into it. So suppose, hypothetical scenario, I have a problem with someone, we are directed to mediation, we go through mediation, and some short time later, I feel like they are not holding up their end in good faith. Either the conduct has continued or perhaps they're paying lip service, or perhaps they've changed their game. I don't know. Now, obviously, I know my path of escalation from an enforcement standpoint, but is what was said in the mediation available for me to say, I can go to my seneschal or go to an officer and go, look, this is what was said. We came to this agreement and he's not even honoring that. Or is what was said in there completely closed off to everyone? And see where I'm coming from? I don't want to turn this into a weapon. I'm not going down that road, but I am curious. So
what I would do in this case, if someone has agreed to something and they're not following through, the first thing you want to do is talk to the mediator.
Okay.
Who documented all of this.
Okay.
There's already been some trust established with the mediator between the other party and the mediator, and so allow that person to go ahead and reach out and say, look, you agreed to this. My understanding is that you're not following this. Is that true? And I mean, it's a very simple question, and usually it will have a very simple answer.
Okay.
If someone starts trying to give a complex answer back, saying, well, I didn't really feel this, and well, that's not what you agreed to. So,
what it sounds like is you're either going to get one of two responses. It's either going to be, well, I know we agreed to this, but I interpreted it to mean this. And at that point, the mediator can decide, okay, that seems like a reasonable response, or that was kind of unreasonable. You actually did step outside the bounds of this thing. Okay, at that juncture, I think it gets back to, okay, how do you want this thing actually resolved? And because it's dealing with the same particular issue, this is one of the things that if you did come to the conclusion that somebody crossed the line, you're going to still have to get it resolved some way. If you think mediation can solve it, go back to that. If you don't think you can actually solve it, use the regular grievance process at that juncture.
Okay.
Except because
Mediation can be used if things escalate to the point where the kingdom central has to get involved, because obviously the mediator can then share documentation about what was talked about in the meeting if it's become something that, as I said, the kingdom central or the crown wants to get involved in.
Yeah.
We're not trying to hide everything, but we're trying to keep it.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Keep it at lowest level
Yeah.
possible, and then keep it confidential until the point where it becomes something other than just mediation.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing about this particular process. Mediation is supposed to work because both people have a heartfelt belief that they want something settled. It will never work when people are deciding, I don't really want this to be part of this. If they don't believe in it to begin with, it's an absolute waste of time. Okay, because you've already decided, I'm not going to sit there and abide by the agreement. Therefore, why are we going through this? But when it does work, it works because the people do figure, I do want something to actually stop. And when you get them to fully understand, when they're talking with each other, understand each other's perspectives, then it's okay. I can understand where you came off this way. Let's both agree that either one or both of us messed this up, and this is what we don't want in the future. And at that point, we're good to go.
Okay. I don't want to get too technical, which is something I know I'm prone to do. I was just kind of curious.
No,
So
I
all that dynamic exchanged in a conversation, and I'm just curious. Is that
No. It's a legitimate question to actually figure if it goes beyond this, what actually happens. The simplest answer is, if it goes beyond this, you are going to have to refer back to regular mundane ways to actually settle conflict, or the ways which you have inside the SCA, because it's spelled out in what we talked about on Monday. Corporeal Kingdom Law spells out how we actually resolve conflicts. And if you can't settle on it with this, use that particular method.
okay? All right, that addresses a lot of my questions. Thank you.
Welcome. Does anybody have any other questions? I can start from the beginning again. There aren't a lot of slides to this, but the key factor here is the mediator. It's someone that needs to be who has a good ear, is tactful, patient, and objective. So no matter what each person has said, you can't not take sides, even if something is obviously not correct or is a wrong action. You cannot take sides. You're there to ask questions and to clarify for both sides. And it's very difficult to be in the middle when you might obviously feel one way or another. And also for mediation, as Rob was saying on Tuesday, there are certain things that might preclude some people from being a mediator. Like, for instance, Rob was saying, if the issue is between a knight and someone else, he's already a member of the chivalry, so someone might want to preclude him from being a mediator in this case. Same thing would be me, and if someone was a pelican, that's it within their right, because usually I would know someone in the pelican circle.
Yeah, what you're generally going to have, whether it's a program or whether we have people just using the principles, both people are going to decide on who could actually be a decent mediator. They both have to agree on the person. If you can't just have one person assigned to it and say, hopefully you can actually dig up stuff. The people involved in mediation have to be involved in choosing that mediator. Whether this is a formal program where we have a list of people and we know what are the qualities of this person, That is, where do they fit in the SCA structure? Are they a peer? Do they just have a grant? Do they have particular offices? Do they have particular interests? And then we compare it to the people who are involved. Where do they actually live? Whatever that is, those two people involved in mediation have to say, I'm willing to take this person and have this person help walk us through our differences.
So here's a suggestion. I had already talked to Rob about this, but the mediation process is not going to be hours upon hours upon hours of your time, of someone's time for a single mediation, as far as when you're actually having the two parties meet. Most people want to get this done, so I would say, after you've already had the summaries of their points and you've already shared those, you give each party a chance to speak uninterrupted by the other party, and then the other party can respond, and then they can do their own talk about their feelings and their issues outside of the response. But you're not there to set up a meeting between two people so they can just banter back and forth between each other. The mediator must keep a tight rein on that kind of conflict that would happen during a mediation.
Yeah. There should be a rule. If you're actually mediating, if somebody feels they've had enough, they can basically let you know, here's the particular point. I've had enough of this. I don't believe we can achieve this goal. It is over. We're out. Okay. The mediator can try to keep people together, but if somebody just flat says, I can't handle what's going on. A lot of that can actually come from when the people actually start doing the talk outside of the interview. If this kind of procedure is being used, each person who's involved in mediation knows what the other person is actually going to make as points. They already know that. They're still allowed to actually state it. Person A is going to state their idea of how things actually worked out. Person B is going to actually reflect it back later. When they're given a chance to actually express the reasons why, that's fine. But if they ever get to the point to where they're meandering and going off to deal with things that are not specific to what you're trying to mediate, okay, to the point where it's going to be distracting, you may have to actually give up the process, because at that point you're not trying to resolve the problem. You're just there to actually have people hear you yammer.
So I have a question.
Huh?
So from what I'm hearing and gathering, I'm deducing here that this is a mediator. It's also good to have somebody that may not be a peer in a group of mediators. Am I hearing that correct?
Not essentially. It depends.
Because I don't know. Okay, it's not as necessary to actually be a peer in some cases. Granted that you tend to get peers pulled into this role because.
Let me, maybe you're mishearing. So what I'm hearing is that sometimes it's good that a mediator is not a peer.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
Because some things may not actually be at that particular level. Let's say you got just a small issue between two members of a shire. It's just they have some disagreement on that level. They might have somebody in the general region who can help them iron out their difference. It doesn't have to be a peer because it's not something on that level. As long as the two people who want to be mediated trust the other person, again, it could be somebody who's a friend, between the two people. As long as that friend understands for this to work, okay, they should be following these basic principles. Then you're good. Because if you don't follow them all, you have a serious chance of misstepping, getting somebody feeling like, well, you're on this person's side instead of actually being on mine while trying to resolve it. And then the process doesn't work.
And then also, this might have been said, but remind me, I've had very long days. If there is an individual who feels that they have these qualities, and this is something that they would like to go and let people know, I would be available as a mediator, who do they contact?
Well, that's a good question. According to this process, it would be the MPC or the mediation process consultant. That's because that's the gatekeeper and the person that assigns mediators to a mediation request.
Yeah.
So how does somebody find out who that person is?
Well, that's a good question because this process has not been enacted yet. That
Okay.
decision hasn't been made. Um,
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head, I would think the NPC would either be myself or Mahadi.
Yeah.
Just going for right now,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
we would contact other people who are different levels, different rankings, peer and on down, that are good or be willing to, or we could be contacted to be mediators. And what we would do is we would talk to you for a while, and then we would talk to some friends or some people in your local area that know you, that we could talk to them about you. I mean,
I see it as being almost like a job interview setup.
mhm,
People who say
yes.
they have the interest in it would actually give a certain number of a couple of references. We make sure we let the references know of all these things we need this person to be good at. Here are these particular qualities. What can you tell me? Hopefully the references are going to be truthful with us. Honestly, we don't want people who, okay, we know somebody's prone to gossip. We don't want somebody who's prone to gossip to be a mediator because we don't want to have to clean that mess up. Okay, when they decide to, they have a particular tendency. In fact, when they do mess up, okay, and if I were envisioning how to make this thing actually work, I would try to make it as professional as when it's over, let the people involved in mediation fill out a feedback form of some sort. They give us an idea of, are they satisfied with what they got? And if they got involved in something, they weren't too keen about it. We want to know that. We want to know if the person who's mediating, did they overstep themselves? Did they actually have issues where instead of letting people talk, they were doing all the talking? That they didn't give people enough information about how the process worked. If they kept interrupting people and not letting them fully explain themselves, as opposed to letting them actually talk instead of just clarify. Did they feel like they were actually involved in process? If they gave us feedback, we find out we have a person that's not really trying to mediate so much as to dictate, we'd want that person pulled out of the process. Okay, that's going to be one of the potential issues with this. In its present form, the things we've actually listed are best used in terms of, if you want to be a mediator, take into account this is what you're going to be needing. If we want to turn it into a kingdom function and turn some type of job, then we would have to be aware of questions like you're giving us. How will we follow through on finding the right people and then maintaining a list of people who are valuable?
Something to remember if you want to be a mediator, is that this is not going to be necessarily a fun job. It could be very rewarding, but not necessarily fun. And your name could be dragged through the mud quite a bit. Just letting everybody here know that. Mm-hmm. I know Rob has, and I have mediated things in and outside of the SCA. Mm-hmm. And when people are genuine and they want to resolve things, it works very well. But there'll always be that time when people don't want to resolve things. They want their pound of flesh, and they want their say for their pound of flesh, and nothing's going to stop them. And in those cases, you kind of get dragged down.
Yeah, it's not exactly mediation. I can give another example of a situation I got involved with. I've been involved in marriage encounter, which marriage encounter requires that people take the time to actually work with their spouse through a particular process. It is it's very intensive. We had an encounter at one particular point where the people weren't really dedicating themselves. Well, one of the two partners weren't dedicating themselves to the process and were being distracting to everyone around, where the person in charge of encounter that weekend had to effectively tell them, go away. You're not doing what we need. You need to stop. If we have mediation working, you may have to, if it's not working, you have to be able to tell people, what you're doing, it's not meeting this need. It has to stop.
So I'm sure, I mean, I will kind of touched on this, but I wanted to talk about this again. What happens when someone agrees to this and then doesn't follow through? And we talked about, you should reach out to the mediator first to see if they can talk and get the person back on track. That would be step one. Step two, if this then is something that is covered by current kingdom law or society documents for grievances, that is your next step. You can reference, of course, that you tried mediation and in your mind it didn't work. And in that case, then the kingdom or the board in that case could reach out to the mediator and find out, what took place, and the mediator would share all documentation they have, for good or ill. But hopefully,
yeah, that could be one particular approach. The other approach could possibly be, because if they were working it up with the grievance process, and they did explain mediation is what was necessary, they could provide the same documents since you already worked your way through it. They could just as easily be the people say, and this is what was provided. And then whoever's dealing with it in the grievance process can still compare the two sets of notes, probably saying the same thing. Because essentially it still have to iron out, well, why did they still have a problem?
Okay, it's my understanding then that mediation process are for two parties that do not want things to escalate. Is that a correct view?
That is correct.
that's correct, yes.
Okay. You also say that this mediation proposal is on its way out to the bod.
No.
How are you? I'm sorry, what?
No, not the
It's
bod. No,
this
this is the only thing we're actually proposing. We're posing this to the Crown and Kingdom Seneschal.
okay. Who are you going to be answerable? Who is the MPC going to be answerable to?
If it was up to me to suggest it, I'd put it in the hands of the Seneschal. I would put it in the hands of MPC would be answerable to the Kingdom Seneschal.
Personally, I agree, since they also have to, since they're the ones that are responsible for the grievance process too.
Yeah, that's my thought. That's my thought behind that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with the Crown or the Kingdom Seneschal.
Yeah, we just know that normal chain of command there. When things start going south, they're going to be seeing it anyway.
That's right. Both parties would, yes.
My only reservation with putting it in the hands of the Crown, and I'll be brutally honest here, but you're putting it in the hands of an office that trades places based on someone's athletic ability and their hand-eye coordination. That does not lend itself towards management skills.
Man,
You're also not the ones legally responsible for the activities in the group.
Again, that I can agree with. However, when we look at the process, or actually we look at the grievance process, when we look at the chain of command actually has King, Seneschal, and Crown as part of the people who it goes to. The fact is, the board actually understands that. They understand these things should be handled by the people at the top, because they have their two levels that are going to be seeing it if it steps outside the kingdom. So, and yes, I do agree. There's a number of crowns who I wouldn't trust farther than I could throw them in terms of being able to iron out a difference. But that's the game we play.
It is. I mean, there are drawbacks no matter who you put it in the hands of. I guess my procedural side says, if it comes down to the Crown and the Seneschal disagreeing about something regarding the mediators, who gets final say? I mean, that's going to be the ultimate question, is if the Crown says one thing and the Seneschal says the other, who wins by
Then that
policy?
becomes a board decision to a society level office to decide, which would be the society Seneschal.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing is, if it was still being contentious, the appeals process says the people involved in it, they're the ones who have the final say as to where it goes.
Mhm.
Sure.
You can't stop at Crown and Kingdom Seneschal as long as somebody's dissatisfied. They can keep kicking it up if they want to. It's kind of like the heraldic submission process, though. Let Star Principal Herald blow your armory up. Okay, yeah, you can appeal this to Laurel all you want to. Chances are they're gonna blow you up too. Okay, it's hard to get.
You're just a glutton for punishment.
Yes, they are, and that's if somebody wants to take a grievance that Kingdom Seneschal or the Crown has actually said, well, this is as far as we think it should actually go, and this is who's actually right, and they want to kick it up. I honestly think the board's going to look at it unless there was an egregious misinterpretation on the part of Kingdom Seneschal or Crown. If it was, if they were really off. Outside of that, board's probably going to look at it and say, sorry, you handled it well at that particular level. You have to live with it, and that's our ruling when we move on.
Okay.
Hello. I'm sorry, my voice is a little bit wrecked. Is there any way you can possibly go through some of the earlier slides so I can read them a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
No, go through it.
So, here we are. The scope of the class is addressing conflict within the ESCA, and this is a presentation of a proposal for an addition to kingdom law for the creation for a mediation process to aid in conflict resolution for issues arising within this kingdom.
This is amazing, by the way. I thank you guys so much for putting the time and running this.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, next slide is definition of terms of what is conflict and what is resolution. So conflict is the antagonistic state or action or divergent ideas, interests, or persons, and the process of finding an answer to the antagonistic state, divergent ideas or interests or opinions. The whole point is for the mediation process is to make what I call make the pain stop. Mm-hmm. Everybody just agrees that no matter what we do here, nobody will be inflicting any more pain to any other person after this process. You may not agree with what the other person said or what the actions taken by the other person, but we both agree that we're not going to escalate it any further. And the purpose of the mediation process is to open, improve, and dialogue and create empathy between the two disputants. I like disputants better than conflictees. And aiming to help the parties reach an agreement. If one or both parties in a dispute have no desire to reach agreement, mediation cannot take place. So even if they agree to the mediation, they said, I just agreed to this because I didn't want this to go up to the Senate to get potentially sanctioned or banished or something. They're agreeing to this, but they really have no intention of taking place in the mediation to reach an agreement, or sometimes a mutually disadvantaged agreement to both parties. Both parties usually want their own resolution. One party will want a public apology, usually another person will say, I don't want to give that. If you're not even willing to talk about it, then mediation cannot really take place, and that'll be the mediator should know about that after doing the interviews with the the disputants, sorry. And then we have the roles of the mediator. So you have to facilitate communication. You have to sometimes do education. You have to convene the meeting and the meetings between the two parties, and you have to be in charge of the meetings. You have to run the meetings. Each party does get their say, but you have to make sure that no one is dominating the other with what they're saying or what they're talking about. It must be balanced. I recommend in this case using a stopwatch and a certain amount of time, saying, all right, we've heard from disputant A, let's hear from disputant for 15 minutes, so we'll hear from disputant B for 15 minutes. If disputant B decides he can do everything in 10 minutes and wants to give up 5 minutes, that's perfectly his right, but he listened to 15 minutes to disputant A, so disputant A should listen to 15 minutes from disputant B. You need to keep it even with each other.
there any way you guys could stick it, instead of doing like time, just do it by topics? Or I guess it'd be like kind of like more like a paragraph, as I can kind of sort of see it like for as far as like an
Well,
issue.
since we're talking about in the actual meeting, people actually talking to each other and talking, I would go with time.
Yeah, it is. Sorry,
Yeah,
it was just a
it's
thought.
hard to do, but it really, and that way that also allows the mediator to actually, keep control of the meeting, because you could say, all right, disputant A, you've been talking for 10 minutes, you have 5 more minutes before you need to wrap up. Because no one wants to listen to one person talk. At least I don't. I don't know about you, Rob, but I don't want to listen to one person talk for 3 hours about issues.
It's the reason.
I've already done an interview, and we already have a summary of your points, and that summary has been shared with the other disputant, so they should know.
Okay.
You already.
Oh, that's right. We haven't shown her that part yet. So yeah.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there
Sorry.
yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have put my questions to the end.
No, it's okay. So you have to be a question. You have to answer questions, and you have to clarify. So the questions really are, in many cases, can be reality checks. So, what's a good, good clarifying question? Here's a good one. Did you realize that what you were stating was against current SCA policy, and the SCA policy says X, and you said X? Did you realize that you were going against that policy at that time? And some people will say yes, some people will say no. I mean, I don't know the answer, but you have to learn to question and ask what are the right questions to ask, usually to clarify their intent. And you have to be a catalyst towards, resolving the issue. So question from disputant A, who instigated the issue, and disputant B. So disputant B, what is it that you're looking for from disputant A in this case? And they may say, I just need an apology. And so, you ask the question to disputant A, are you willing to apologize for what you said? They'll either say yes or no. But as the person responsible for the detail, the mediator has to take notes about what's being talked about, what's agreed to, and if any new points come up between the two disputants that have not already been addressed before in the summaries. That can happen too. Okay, next slide. Confidentiality is the cornerstone of this process. So you will keep the mediation between the 3 of you. You're not going to advertise that these 2 people have been in mediation unless you're asked by the Crown or the Kingdom Seneschal. If they ask you if they've been through mediation, then you should respond saying yes. And if they want to see the notes, since they are a higher level of appeal in any of the grievance policies than this proposed mediation, you should comply, and you should make that plainly clear to the people who are in this mediation process that if this escalates and the Kingdom Seneschal or the Crown wants to see what we talked about, the mediator will share. It's not to blackmail anybody, it's just to let them know that someone else can look at what they agreed to other than just the mediator, and also hold them accountable.
Richard, earlier you said that it was the MPC that was going to be the point of contact with the Kingdom.
Well, the
mediator reports
the
to the
mediator is
MPC,
the
and
one
the
that
MPC does it.
handled the actual mediation, would be the first point of contact. The mediation process consultant is the one that signs the mediator, and usually does get the final summary from the mediator. But the mediator would know more details than the MPC. MPC has notes, and if there's going to be any question, the MPC is going to say, well, you need to talk to Sir Mahadi. He was the actual mediator in this case. He would know more than I. Here are the notes that I have, and I'll be happy to share them. But Mahadi may have some more information or some insights that are not shared in the notes here. It's just like, because the mediator is actually the interviewer and the person who actually interacted with both parties. That person is going to have more knowledge than the person that got the summary afterwards. So this is the actual mediation process that we proposed. Cynthia, you're the one that's been asking me questions.
The most recent person, I think, was Uther, who came in late. I was the one who asked about,
going back and looking at the early slides, right? Sorry to interrupt you. So the process that we proposed starts on slide 10, and it starts with whoever is the mediation process coordinator. They will assign a mediator to the case, providing the mediator with the contact information for all concerned parties. And anyone can, in this process, anyone can ask for mediation, even someone who is not a disputant. So if you had, for instance, you had two friends, they were fighting like cats and dogs, like Rob and Tostic do over heraldry.
Not sure what he's going to win. I honestly think he's going to win it, but I digress.
Technically, you could assign them a mediator. In this case, if they may have different interpretations of the rules, and I'm sure what would happen is, maybe someone would reach out to a higher level herald, like Laurel or Star, and ask for their decision on something. But it really depends on what the issue is. Next slide. Excuse me. This is something that we feel very strongly about, is that the mediator should contact both parties and talk to them either on the phone or by Skype or Zoom. There's no substitute for this, and just having a conversation by email will not cut it. So you don't just reach out and ask questions on an email document and ask them to respond. There has to be some interaction between the mediator and the disputant, and the mediator would have to take notes. And then after they conduct the interview, I believe it's on the next slide here. Yeah, the mediator will write up a summary and list the reasons behind the disagreement as bullet points, and then send that back to the disputant to get their sign off if they agree or not. Usually, if the mediator has done their job correctly, the bullet points should match up to what the disputant is stating, and then you get sign off. That gives actual words, a written document, to what the disputant is upset about. And it also means that someone has heard and understood the disputant's point of view. I'm not saying they agree with them, but they've heard them and they understand the points. And that's, in many cases, 9/10 of the battle in mediation, having someone understand your point of view. Next slide. Okay. Mediator will contact each party and attempt to establish a meeting between all concerned parties. Prior to the meeting, the mediator will provide each party with a copy of both sets of the bullet point summaries. And during this meeting, the mediator will begin the meeting with the stated purpose of the mediation. The stated purpose always is that now that you've agreed to mediation, you will stop any activity that causes any additional pain or discomfort to the other person regarding any of the points that are being addressed today. And we don't want any subsequent new points coming up either. Okay, next slide. So during the mediation session, the mediator will encourage the use of active listening. As I think I said earlier, it's each party needs to read and repeat. So they're going to look at the points from the other disputant, and they'll say they have 6 points, and one of the things the mediator should ask the other disputant to look at is those points and then read them back. You're not looking for understanding. You're looking that they will look and hear these are their points, and it further opens up dialogue between the two, and it to some degree helps both parties listen to each other. It's not guaranteed, but it does help. Okay. After the mediation is done, the mediator will write a summary and send all the documentation to the mediation process coordinator. If one of both concerned parties choose not to engage in this meeting, the mediator must explain to both parties that further action by either party on these topics should not be reenacted. And that was the scope that we talked about earlier. And at the end of the meeting, the mediator would state that again. We all agreed, no matter what else is going on, even if disputant B does not get their apology, we agree that there's not going to be any further action taken by either party on this at all to cause anyone any more pain. The whole point is to resolve this, and so we are agreeing that we are resolving this, and no further action will take place. We state that at the beginning, and we need to state that again at the end. And that's, I believe, the last slide. So one of the questions that was brought up earlier is that what happens if someone agrees to the mediation and then the other person finds out later that they're not really following it? What should you do? Well, the person you should contact if you feel like the other person is not following what was agreed to is the mediator. Mediator would know more than anybody else and would also have some sort of relationship with both parties and would already have the contact information and could contact the other person and talk to them about, are you really following what we agreed to? You agreed to X, are you doing X? And usually you're going to have a clearly defined answer that will support that they are or they are not. It could be as simple as a yes or a no, but usually it's never that simple. And this also entails any new action that would cause hurt or pain as a result of these topics. So, someone may say that, well, I didn't agree to this because this is new. And well, it's still related to this topic that's listed here as point 2 on the summary. And we agreed that we would not take any further actions at all, new or currently or new or otherwise, on any of these points. You agreed to that, and you need to stand by that. And if they say, well, I'm not going to, and I said, well, then the other person is free to escalate this up through the grievance process stated in Kingdom Law and Kapora. And they'll probably ask, well, what does that mean? And my answer to them would be, well, I can show you the documentation of what could happen. I'm not saying it would happen, but you agreed to this, and now you're backing out of the agreement. So this is what could happen, and of course the end all be all would be sanctions of level 1, 2, or 3 banishments.
So what happens if the mediator gets overwhelmed inside the process or ends up being abused by the parties involved?
Well, that's the reason why we have to choose our mediators very carefully. Mm-hmm. They cannot let themselves be overwhelmed. Yeah. You have to have understanding but strong personalities here that set limits for both people.
Yeah. If what you're saying is, okay, we don't have an actual mediation process in the kingdom, somebody, however, wanted to act as if they were a mediator, we'd be asking that, when you went into it, you should be aware this is what you're going to have starting out. Okay, these are going to have to be your qualities. At the point to where you say you're losing it, it's time to dive for cover. You have to just basically say you can't be part of it. If the people somehow, drag you, this is very akin to what happened at what we call a high school drama thing.
Right.
You were trying to help out these two friends, but then they actually started to drag you down with them. Well, fact is, you knew that you didn't start it. It's time now to dive for cover. You may want to actually yourself okay, if you're part of that, get hold of a completely, okay, another party who believe can actually deal with it and make sure they understand this is my part in this. Because yes, you did get involved in it. Something became overwhelming. Make sure you get them to understand, especially if you did it, but you didn't do it with any intention to actually harm somebody. Make sure that you don't get dragged down with that kind of thing.
Also, the mediator can, of course, stop the mediation process at any point in time. If, for instance, you're the mediator and you're feeling overwhelmed, then usually something is not going right and something else needs to happen. So either one, a new mediator needs to be used, or two, it's gone far beyond mediation, and that can be the case. In this case, I would reach out to the NPC, who we don't know who that is, but I would reach out to them and then ask for guidance from them about what they think.
That'd be in the same case, say if something has gone against the law, like that's going on, I guess, or.
Well, if someone has done something against the law, then that's not something for the mediation process to handle. You can't mediate the law.
Right.
Yeah. So if they broke kingdom or corporeal law, as an example, so then that is something that needs to be handled by the seneschalate, and because they are in charge of making sure the rules are enforced. Actually, that is their purview as local and area presidents. They are the legal representatives, and if something legal is involved, they need to be involved. So that's beyond this process.
I'm sorry, I'm asking all kinds of random questions. I work for the ACA, so I'm used to trying to help people, and then like all of a sudden them telling me extra things like whoa, not what I need to know, but
That does beg the question. What happens if, outside the scope of the complaint, so you have two guys that just don't like each other and they agree to mediate, and over the course of the conversation, one of them blurts out, to be indelicate about it, a just outright confession that they broke something in kingdom policy. Is the mediator held to any requirements to report that?
That's the question here. So if the mediator is a deputy seneschal, and that's one of the things that I'm not so strong about it being under the seneschalate. If you're a deputy seneschal and you're a warranted officer, if something is broken and you know about it, you have to report it. You don't have a choice.
Okay.
If you're a representative of the crown, technically you don't have a choice either. Okay. But it depends on what it is. So, for instance, there are all different levels of breaking kingdom law. I didn't send a waiver report. Okay.
Yeah, and if it's something a matter of criminal law, I understand. You're suddenly complacent after the fact, and I'm not asking about that, but I'm saying, some guy says, yeah, you're damn right, I hit you harder than I should have. You deserved it. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, Jesus, I didn't need to know this. And
yeah,
it wasn't part of the...
That's something that the mediator would put in their report, I would think.
Okay.
Okay, but that's not something that should be reported out to the marshalate necessarily.
Okay, that was more my question.
Yeah.
It's...
So,
because
in case, it really depends on what is being said and the context, and well, you're damn right I hit you hard, but and the mediator could ask, well, when did that happen? And the guy would say 3 months ago at a fire practice, or could be yesterday at a fire practice. Then the mediator could say, well, maybe the two of you shouldn't fight each other for a while.
Okay.
So of course, if
but
you're
I guess
the only two fighters in a shire, that might be hard.
Yeah, I guess my question is more along the lines of, if you're the mediator and, suppose that happens and you're like, all right, this was not part of the original conversation. Neither of you were particularly sore about that. Let's move on and not revisit that. I want to make sure the mediator, I'm assuming me for a second, I want to make sure the Kingdom Night Marshal doesn't come to me later on and goes, so have you heard anything about these two, being excessive with each other? And I'm like, I want to make sure I don't get in trouble going, nope, I'm not the police here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since this process has been formalized, there's still some questions that would be outstanding.
Okay.
So the response level for reporting rule breaking would be formalized in that process.
Okay.
But that hasn't been done in this process. We're just talking about just mediation.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't mean to go too far askew. That kind of
those
struck
questions,
me.
and that's really one of the reasons we're having this is to see what kind of questions come up. So we're not asking the mediator to, inform upon the people that are being, and I won't say inform, but report to the kingdom any issues that they hear about, other than legal ones.
Yeah. Also, another thing to take into account, we're talking about an actual formal mediation process. The truth is, we've had mediation go on for years.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a number of disputes where we've had people choose to actually try to do something not part of the grievance process. Some of the times issues are actually settled pretty well. Sometimes they're abject failures. My thought is that most of the abject failures, they tend to fail because mediator didn't actually understand best role to be able to take, didn't have the best of the qualities, didn't understand the concept of confidentiality. That's what actually breaks it down. We can either keep using the haphazard system that we have, and we can hope that we can actually get over most of our particular issues, or we could have something a little bit more formal where people have a very clear understanding. If I'm having a problem and I do want to have it solved, I can use this as the steps to actually address it.
Okay. And I think that's as good an answer as I could ask for.
Well done, Rob.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at 13 after this.
We're at 13 after. So unless I'm going to stop sharing at this time, this is only supposed to take an hour. It took an hour and 13 minutes. It always usually goes long, and that's fine. We're here to answer questions, and excuse me, we have tonight. So does anybody have anything else?
Is there no place where the slides will eventually be available?
I can upload them to the group if you want to send them to me, or you're welcome to upload them if you want to.
If anybody wants to share this stuff, share it to your hearts. Let's see who. Wait a minute. Who did I send? I know I sent it to Richard. Kat, if I could send it to you, I can send it to you. I can just send it to you, and you can actually give it to people on your hearts. I have no problem with that. Unless
Sure.
Richard, how you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
No issues on my end.
Okay. Again, they're just proposals. We'll find out if anybody wants to use it. And again, at the very least, even if we don't have an actual system in place where we have a particular office, I'm hoping that more people will actually look at this is what you need to have going if you are going to be a mediator.
So just a reminder to all the potential mediators that might be on this meeting, be careful if you volunteer to mediate, only because you have to be willing to be judge and in some cases executioner. You're not the jury and for any stretch, but you have to enforce the laws of the meeting and the mediation. And that means that one person is not allowed to dominate the other by either in time or in the amount of what's said. You have to keep it even.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, one person can easily intimidate the other, and that's not the point of mediation.
I know you say that this is a proposal. Do you have any, do you know of any kind of loose timeline when they might be looking at? Okay.
No. Okay. I haven't given this to the particular people. I have no idea what schedule they might actually. Like I said, they first have to agree that this is actually worthwhile. One, Second, we're just proposing a particular office, so until they have a clear idea as to how it can actually be formally structured, they're not going to sit there and just flat out okay to things. So the first step is just putting it in their hands, making them aware, here's something we're considering. What do you know? What do you actually think? If they say yes with that, we'll still be involved in fleshing it out to where there's specific understanding as to this is what we're going to have in place. Definitely for the sake of the Kingdom Seneschal, they're going to have to know, hey, this is what we have in our hands. So I would say your best takeaway from this at this point is, if you want to consider yourself somebody who wants to help people out, or you want to be able to look for qualities of people who can actually help people out, take what's in the notes there to give you an idea of what you should be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I think this is awesome.
I do too.
All right.
And I really appreciate you guys putting it together.
I'm glad we were invited. Because,
I am hopeful. Part of the reason I asked for this was I wanted to get some curriculum out there because I knew you would record it and share it. There are frankly a few people who, when this goes up, I'm going to nudge them. I'm going to go, do yourself a favor, watch this.
Yeah, it's there's some. Honestly, I'll be honest. I'm a major Stephen Covey fan. Okay, I'm absolutely in the 7 Habits. I would love to express 7 Habits to most of my friends. Granted that I know many of them would only take so much of it, but when they are taught those principles, okay, a light bulb goes off in a lot of people's brains in terms of, wow, I never thought of it that way. This can really help me out. And yeah, being able to point people in that direction is great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I kind of gathered that.
Yeah.
I bet everybody on this call has at least one person they know that could be a mediator or who could benefit from this process.
Definitely.
And this process doesn't just, mediation doesn't just work inside the SCA. It works outside of it actually much better. They call it arbitration, as you all know, and that's with lawyers, but.
Right.
Yeah, it works better there because there's usually money involved.
Yeah, usually.
True.
And you can sue over it because it's always usually binding arbitration.
Right.
Right.
And that's it. But even so, even if it does have a binding aspect, mediation works for so many people because they are involved. They know that, well, I am being heard. I am being appreciated. This third disinterested party, even they are getting money, is going to hear what I have to say, and either they're going to legitimize and they're going to say, okay, yeah, you have something to really work with here, or they're going to say, that just a reasonable person won't accept that. You're going to have to change this up. At the very least, they've been heard, and that's what most people want.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
When you've been around in this for more than 20 years, you definitely learned there's a lot of people that could use this.
Mm-hmm. If you're seriously considering being a landed, for example, I wouldn't say landeds are automatically some of the best mediators, but having mediator qualities will serve you extremely well.
Right.
Considering the number of times people are going to drop you, they're going to drop you into a number of issues.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Emotions are going to fly, and you have to find a way not to get dragged into the emotion, the actual emotion. You have to help them actually bridge something because you're trying to keep your barony together.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say again is that was on one of the slides is the questions asked by the mediator when they first do their interview. My favorite is, what was your goal in performing the act that you did, or whatever it was, whether it be bullying, whether it be hate speech or something else, who knows? But, why did you share all this on Facebook? And when I've asked people that before, usually it's because, well, I wanted to poke the bear and I wanted people to give attention to the subject.
Yeah.
And
well, you poke the bear, all right.
Yeah. So I always say, well, when you poke the bear, when you did this, you're poking a lot of other people whose feelings are hurt and causing them pain. And in the one case I asked about this, that person was not so concerned about the people who were in pain, but the other people who did not express their revulsion to whatever was being done. They thought the silent majority was not being expressed, and they felt the duty to express for them, which is usually never a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the reason it's called a silent majority or minority. It's silent.
Yep.
So if they want to express, they can, but it's not all up to us to vent. And during COVID, that's what we're all doing. I think a little too much venting.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Definitely.
My grandmother always taught me never vent to a person. Write down a letter to Santa Claus. Let Santa take care of it, and you mail it to the North Pole, and no one will ever see it.
A lot of things, or a lot of times, what I do is I'll type furiously, and then I'll read it and go, nope, and delete it.
Yeah.
But the act of typing it out gets it out, and then you can just say, this isn't worth, posting, and delete it.
I do a similar thing. A somewhat similar thing. I give it like a 12-hour test. I find in most stuff, if it's filled with freaking anger, like I said, I spit everything out here, boom. I leave it alone for 12. I look at it, and then I begin the editing. And I try to bleed most of the emotional language out until this is the thing I really want them to understand. Okay, let me check it, see if it doesn't have any of those weird trigger words that are going to set somebody off. Okay, it doesn't have that, and it says what I want. And if I get to the point where I say I still want to send it at that point, I'm good to go. As opposed to the half against my stuff is I cut out of it because I was going off on a tangent just because I wanted to get back at you or something.
Right.
And because that's not going to help. Digging away and trying to hurt people is not going to help the issue. Yeah, it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I vent to my journals what I vent to. Private journals and diaries are awesome.
That's a good idea too, for sure. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for teaching tonight. If nobody has any
Yes,
other
indeed.
questions or thoughts or things to share, we can go ahead and jump off of here.
Can I
All right,
throw
thanks,
one thing,
everybody.
Richard?
I'm
Can
gonna
I
go ahead and
throw?
end the meeting now, Katerina.
Ivo wanted to throw one more thing out there real quick.
Go ahead, Ivo.
Yeah. This is just food for thought as you guys move forward with trying to get the mediator moderator process set up. You mentioned apologies. Something I've seen enough of that I just want to kind of put a bug in your ear on. If someone wants to give an apology, go for it. But I've always told, when I'm trying to settle my differences with people, I've always told them, look, if you don't want to apologize, don't. Because I know how humiliating it is to apologize with a knife at your back. You will make an enemy who will sit on that shelf and fester for years if you make the wrong person apologize. And I recently told someone, and long story, no details, but there's someone I have a huge difference with, and their peer offered to make them apologize. I said, no, don't you dare. Making them apologize is going to make them hate me even more, probably burn a bridge with you, and that doesn't solve anything except make a lifelong comic book level enemy out of them. And I won't do that to another human being. If they want to apologize, great, more power to them. But making them do it doesn't accomplish anything, and I find it humiliating.
Yeah, and I think we should all say for the mediator has no power to make anybody do anything. It's all up to the conflictees about what they do and how much they do. It's up to them. So if they ask their opinion, if they ask our opinion, the mediator can certainly express it. But we can't make anybody do anything. That's not anywhere in the proposal that we have a peer say you need to do this. We don't say that anywhere in here. That's one of the reasons why this process is for ranking, being a mediator, being at any level. We just don't want peers doing this. Everybody can benefit from mediation.
Yeah, and I would definitely, if this goes through, let people know that you're looking beyond just peers, Because I know so many people that they look at, people are doing different things and go, oh, well, I'm not a peer, so therefore I wouldn't even be able to be a part of that.
Mhm.
So.
Again, it's I taught, like I said, I did this thing in school. Okay, I taught in middle school. We were taught peer mediation, giving it to our students. Peer mediation worked out pretty well for the students. The peer mediators understood the rules that they had to follow in order to get two children to actually side on actually settling matters. It's not all that difficult, and most of them appreciated the keeping the confidentiality and helping their classmates actually settle a particular issue. You can have people on that level help solve problems. I just noted I think it's kind of easier to get the kids involved because all we're dealing with is kid disputes. I know of a number of adults who like to actually tell the anecdotal story because, hey, no crap here. Do you know what somebody did at work? Da 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 type of thing, and not understanding that as soon as you start talking about it, even though you may be thinking about it in a hypothetical, maybe trying to make it sound hypothetical, people will understand who's being discussed, and they get really ticked off over the fact that you are talking about them.
Okay, unless anybody else has any other questions, we're going to end this. Anybody, any other questions or last comments?
No, do appreciate everything though.
All right.
So you and
Thanks,
everybody
guys.
else that was here.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have a
You're
good
very
rest of your
welcome.
evening.
And this process is not perfect, but it's better than what we currently have, we believe. So hopefully it'll make it through. Thank you all. I'll go ahead and end the meeting.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.